Hey guys, it's Luton here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the changes that I've put forward to go into the CTE for the team play and objective period for this session. Now, DICE contacted me the other day and asked if I would give some input on this, and since then I made that video where I asked you guys what you thought, and I got just a ton of feedback. I had to sift through it all, which was hard work, but then I also talked to my squad mates and we discussed some things, and I had a load of my own ideas as well. I kind of collated all that information together, and also there was a lot of you guys putting forward sort of, your kind of feelings towards what certain things were, so I could see some trends, sort of people saying the same things, so it's a good kind of indication about how people are feeling about stuff. So first of all, let me say that, as you guys already know, I've been playing Battlefield almost since its inception, and in that time we've seen a huge change in the way people play. Most of all, I've spent hours and hours and hours trying to work out why people just don't play the objective anymore, and what can be done about it. My rather kind of sad conclusion is that I just don't know if at this stage it's at all possible to salvage that situation. I also want to say that I've spent the past few days with my own squad and my own ideas, just as I said, collating that feedback and thoughts of all of you subscribers and everybody. Now, part of the situation we find ourselves in is due to the game itself, but to a large part it has more to do with the general gaming community and the way people and the player base at large have changed over time. People value team play and winning around a lot less than they used to, and I originally said that, the other day I said just increasing point scores would do nothing to change people, the way people play. Now, I've decided I was originally wrong about this, but not completely. I think it's not the score that's really the key, it's the player position on the board at the end of the round. The score is the mechanic that enables this, but it's not what people actually care about. I will say this though, I do understand why EA and DICE have made some of the changes that they have with regards to promoting epic moments, funny gameplay, and things like my most hated term, bragging rights. As far as I'm concerned, the only bragging people should be doing is telling others how strong they are at objectively winning the round. But I think what bothers me the most is that team play seems to not even be actively encouraged anymore by EA DICE. I've seen many campaigns promoting stunts or only Battlefield moments, but where are the moments of epic team or squad play? For me, the best moments are those. On my server, for example, as well, last night we had loads of players people that really truly play the objective hard. So much so that we had like an 800 ticket round come down to just one ticket. Now that is an epic moment. But the truth of the matter is that I'm not so blind that I can't see that most players simply just don't care about any of this. They're either there to get the kills or to try and just dominate the enemy any way they can, and often with little to no cooperation or teamwork at all. With this in mind, I believe there's only one way to really improve teamwork and objective play, and that's through passive changes that alter the focus for people without them thinking too much on it. We can't change the game too much at this stage anyway. Altering the UI would just make people rage out, and changing mechanics too would just do the same thing. So I've got some changes which I think are possible and will make some small differences. I have others that are a bit more wide-reaching and that perhaps could be considered to be put in place in the future as well. So first up, we've got the high priority CTE changes. These are the things that I feel, they really should be trying to look at. Some a bit more vaguer, but anyway. Okay, first up is to just incentivize objective gameplay. That's got to be the thing. It's got to incentivize. You've got to make people want to play the objective. Whereas right now they have, they don't really feel too strongly one way or the other, especially with the way, killing is and points are, right? Second up, you've got to change the end of round scoreboards to represent your own stats first, and then the overall team play scores the way that Bad Company did on consoles, removing that KD. Now this is not something, this is not the first time I've said this, I've said this many times before, said it in Battlefield 3, said it, when that first came out and we saw it from Bad Company 2, and I was saying like this and this and this. So a lot of these issues are things that I've actually been saying for a long time, and it's kind of good now that I can actually push them forward a little bit. The next one, adjusting scoring in the game so that it rewards those players who push objectives and secure them and defend them. If you haven't actually seen the way the scoring is set up, it's kind of ridiculous, and I'll talk about that later. You should nerf scoring for kills so that it's still valuable but not the primary focus. Change the end around scoreboard as well, like I said already, so that KD is no longer present as it was in Bad Company on the console. It only presents players' overall score and, more importantly, their place of value on the board. This one is a contentious one, but a few people agree it's kind of down the middle, is a small increase on respawn timers. This would make people value their life more and have more of an impact on how the game progresses. And last of all, consider some of the mechanical changes that we've been outlining very shortly that have a direct and important impact on how team play and objective play in those rounds goes down. As I say, if you actually look at the way scoring is set up, it's kind of insane. Kills are usually 100, right? Capping an objective in Conquest is 150. Vehicles are only 100 as well. In Rush, by comparison, if you arm an MCOM in Rush, that's 200 points. If you destroy it, that's 400. If you disarm it as well, it's also 200. So it's kind of all over the place. But when you think a kill is 100, just for an infantry, that's really, really high. Especially when you consider how much of a kind of meat grinder a lot of gameplay is. It's just kind of kill, 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 kill. And a lot of the time, those kills are not that important. People always say that if you're getting the kills, you're helping your team. That's true, but it's only true to an extent. What's more important is to actually move, cap the bases, destroy high-value target vehicles and things. That is what wins rounds. Okay, so my overall concept is that players enjoy being on top or high up on the scoreboard. There's nothing surprising about that, it's pretty obvious. And I remember this, though, was when I had a very successful PvP team in World of Warcraft. We often remarked that it didn't matter for what reason you were on top of the board, it didn't matter what you really did. The only thing people cared about, or more importantly, they only remembered those players who finished on top at the end of the round. And I think this is still very true right now. You can, in some respects, consider that KD or score is kind of irrelevant in relation to this. However, what is relevant is that often players perceive that if you don't end up with a 2 or 1 KD or higher, that your input to that round was negative, or that you're just a very poor player. KD should be removed from the end of round scoreboard so that people are more encouraged to focus on gaining overall objective gameplay that pushes you higher. Scoring, as I said already, would need to be tweaked accordingly to make more accurately represent the player's actions. That's what it's about. Your own personal stats and KD would still be available for you, first thing up at the end of the round, as we saw in Bad Company, so you can see your own performance, gauge how well, if you need to improve that or whatever. There is an argument to make that seeing your KD allows you to judge how balanced your teams are, but I feel, to be honest, this is outweighed by people focusing too much on kills and not on the objectives. And this really brings us to, the main concept that I want to put forward, and that is fluid score. Now this is going to be for rewarding true objective players. Think about this. Right now, if you cap a base, it makes no difference if your team is dominating, or if you're getting steamrolled, you still score the same. This is fundamentally unfair, because it means that if you are the guys who are really trying hard and actually turning the game around for your team, you're not rewarded any more than the guy who's just sitting back in your base, wiping people out with a sniper or a tank, but not moving the game forward. And just think about that for a minute. A conquest base, when you cap it, is worth 150 points. But a kill, as I already said, is worth 100 points. So if you capped 2 conquest bases, that's 300 points. Imagine you have a guy, bipod LMG, sitting there, 3 guys come around the corner, bam bam bam, he cuts them all down. That's 300 points right there, in a second. The amount of time and effort it would take you to get to the other bases and cap them up, that is so much time compared to just grabbing a couple of easy kills. And that's why it's disproportionate. It doesn't make any sense. My solution to this is to have fluid scoring for base capture. Instead of scoring a set amount per base, you would score a varying amount dependent on the position your team is in and the value of capping that base. So if your team has only 1 base out of 5, you'll score much higher to cap the next base. Conversely, if your team is dominating, each base cap will score you less as it's not so important. But that's only the simple way of looking at it though. If we wanted to be even more detailed, which is important, then the amount you could score could also vary dependent on the amount of tickets your team has. So say you're 200 tickets down, capping that 4th base out of 5 would actually still be very important to try and regain the game. So I think if it were possible, taking team ticket percentages into account would also be beneficial and significant to how you score team players. Time would also be another factor that could potentially be put in there. Say your team have not actually capped a base for a certain period of time, then potentially the next base that you cap again is very, very important. So therefore reward them again by adjusting the score based on the importance to the team. That will give you a much accurate representation overall of how people are doing and the importance to the team. Remember though, although scoring here is the mechanic, the actual goal is for people to place higher on the scoreboard than their teammates. It's sad that people don't value just winning the round, but unfortunately that's just the truth of how things are now. We see it all the time. Okay, so now we come to the realistic ideas, and these are the ideas that I feel could actually be put forward into the CTE, things that could actually happen. Now, first up, we've got objective scoring. Right now in Battlefield, scores do not accurately represent, as I said already, what should be important in the game. A kill score gives you just 100 points. But it should be scored more around 50% of that, maybe, so you're getting like 70, 75 points, compared to capping objectives and destroying vehicles, which should be scored higher. Infantry kills are faster, easier, you get more of them, whereas destroying vehicles and capping objectives is far more important overall, yet this isn't shown in your final board position. You should adjust the scoring system so that it's relative to which players are just farming infantry kills and those people who are fighting and capping objectives and destroying vehicles. Vehicles should also be scored on a sliding scale, so a Jeep is not going to be scored the same as, say, an MBT. Well, we have kill assists, so why not cap assists? Alright, say maybe just like 20 points. If you cap an objective with teammates in a 25-meter radius, bam, you get cap assist. Makes sense. Adrenaline boost. So after you cap an objective, you score, say, an extra 15% for then every action you perform for a limited time, say 1 minute. That's going to include kills, caps, support actions. Again, it's incentivizing people to actually work together, get on that base and get a cap. Okay, next up, the comma rows. Now, what I think we should do with the comma rows is just not too much. Just take out one of the unnecessary ones, like saying thank you, and add primary and secondary objectives as an option for the squad leader. This is going to enable squad players to have a choice of order in which bases or objectives they want to attack, rather than just going one to one to one. Now, Chris from Battle Nonsense had a much more detailed comma rows analysis, some of which I feel is unnecessary, but it's also worth checking out nonetheless, and I put the link below. So now we come to mechanical ideas. These are ideas that focus more on the actual game mechanics, and to be honest, they could come in at any time, really. So first up, spotting. Now this has been around for some time now, and it's kind of hilarious because people used to complain and actively sort of promote that you should spot more, spot your targets, but now apparently this is seen as kind of like a really derisive, bad thing, and it's like, oh no, everyone hates spotting. I kind of have to agree, to be honest. Spotting and Doritos, they do actively encourage unintelligent gameplay. They just make you fire towards the marker, and that's all you need to know. And I've been totally guilty of this myself. I mean, even as far back as Bad Company. I remember in Bad Company, I had this fantastic moment. We were defending a base, and there's a guy right off in the distance. I could barely see him, and I was running with the G3 at the time. Very little ammo left, and I dropped a spot on him, got it, and that gave me like this little homing beacon to fire at, and bam, got a headshot on him with only like 5 rounds. So it does show, it kind of gives you this sort of unrealistic way of targeting enemies, and I've never been a massive fan of it. So my preference would be to just take it out, but if Doritos must exist, why not make them, say, 50% transparency and a little bit smaller, so they're less visible and they're just an indication of the direction. Now similarly, when we come to the minimap, I think these should just be blips when firing instead of specific markers. They should just be like little pings, They just give you a vague location indication rather than a highly specific marker, and should only appear when the target is actually firing, not remaining afterwards. Okay, now balancing teams. Now this is a really difficult topic, and I've actually struggled with it lots in the past. If your team is doing really well, why should you be punished and team switch, right? It's true. Whereas, on the other hand, if your teams are so imbalanced, then it's actually going to kill a server to have a constant steamroll taking place. So what's the solution? Well, perhaps the best solution is that team balance mechanics will only occur when the end of round score difference is plus 150. And when it does balance, it only moves, say, a maximum of 3 players in that team. In my experience, this is what I use on my own server, and I find this enables the best quality objective balancing. But, it's a very difficult thing to do. You can't please everybody all the time. Of course people want to play together, but at the same time, you've got to weigh that off against having servers that are constantly imbalanced, which seems to be the way it is. I played a few rounds tonight, and they finished up with a 600 ticket difference, so, that's public games for you. You can't ignore that issue. It needs to be, addressed. Now the next one up is a little bit contentious. The ability to spawn on any member of the squad means that squads end up becoming fragmented constantly because players move around, they spawn on one and not the other, they don't stay together. So if we were to return only to squad leader spawns, I think this would actually be quite positive and make people think about moving as a squad and where they were going to. However, this can also be a really negative thing, because if you have a stupid squad leader, or you know, if you and your team are just pinned down and you can't really break out anywhere, it limits you greatly in where you want to go to. So, you know, I don't really feel too much one way or the other with this, but I did want to note it as something that's worth thinking around, because I feel like that could potentially be a positive or a negative, but it's a bit of a coin toss, so I don't really know which way to go with that one. I think that's something that DICE themselves are just going to have to decide on whether they want to keep it or change it up, so there we go. Okay, so next up I've got something I decided to give its whole own section, and that is helicopters. Please, the helicopters. Helis have required a change for so long now, and I still cannot understand why this has not been addressed properly. Attack helicopters have been just essentially pointless for the whole of Battlefield 4, and it's just I just don't get it. I don't know why they haven't been fixed. Okay, here's how it goes. Transport helicopters first of all though. Transport helicopters are underused on maps, and they really have a place to play. The Blackhawks used to be the kings of team play, and now it's just like the second option of flying. You just feel like, oh, okay, I guess I'll take the transport. You know, it's partly for two reasons. One is that you just can't stay in the air longer than a few minutes without being shot down. Second is they have such weak weapons. Now, me and Daskro discussed this a long time back, and transport helicopters, in our opinion, should have more armour, the same countermeasures as other aircraft. Why don't they have that? And also more powerful miniguns as well. The miniguns should be horrific weapons, but that they overheat quickly or require a long reload. What they should be designed to do is unleash bursts of short-range, highly powerful rounds. You should be able to cut a Jeep in half in a second with these things, but instead it feels like you're firing M&Ms. It's just ridiculous. I consider myself to be a decent middle ground player, but it can be a real struggle to get kills on infantry, even in the open, with these stupid things, and often by the time the heli's passed around it's too late. Now, most players I see in the guns on the miniguns never even score one kill, let alone multiple kills or anything that's useful. One thing that they are good for is shooting down other helicopters though, and that's particularly good, although it's kind of imbalanced because on the US transport heli you can actually cross the streams kind of Ghostbusters style and like thrash down the helicopters. On the other ones you can't do that, so again that's a kind of like imbalance there straight away. Now, the transport helicopters are key to teamwork and objective play. They enable one player to quickly transport squads and players spawning in around the map, but the players themselves often get no reward for doing so. And I remember in Bad Company, I'd fly transport all the time, and we'd win rounds because of it, and you know, where we were transporting people to. But then I'd also end up bottom of the scoreboard every single time. I'd be lucky if I got like 500 points when you were flying transport. And this didn't bother me because I'm not the sort of person to care about that really, but it did highlight how objective playing was not rewarded even back then, and it still isn't now. I've posted a video below of an example of how to use the transport helicopters effectively from me in Battlefield 3. Check that out below and drop a comment if you go watch it, because it's kind of an old video. Now, the scout helicopters need to only have one engineer to be able to repair them. They don't need two. Two makes them invincible death machines, where only a far more coordinated attack than happens at any other time will take them down. It's usually the amount of players focusing on that one helicopter unit means that your whole team ends up totally, you know, in a distracted situation, in disarray, and you'll just lose control of the game because of it. You know, that shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be possible that that one unit can cause so much havoc and be so difficult to take down. It's just totally imbalanced. The solution to this is pretty easy, really. Again, it's very simple. Just close one door. That's it. No more repping. Make that seat the same as the cockpit seat at the front, okay? You still have the seat in there to transport someone, but you just can't rep it. Problem solved. That's it. Attack helicopters used to be able to evade and fly away, rep, come back, do more damage, but now, with how powerful anti-aircraft tools are, they become essentially useless. Now, I'm not a massive fan of attack helicopters. They've always pissed me off because in the past battlefields they've been quite powerful, and so it was always this kind of nightmare trying to deal with them, right? But attack helicopters can't repair, right? That's their kind of balancing thing. So they need some kind of additional passive tool, like the stealth skin, but permanently enabled, that allows them to evade locks a bit better, but not be totally imbalanced on OP either. We should have an option to enable and disable in-game voiceover shoutouts. These, for the large part, mean very, very little, but what they do is give away your position constantly. This makes it almost impossible sometimes to try and make stealthy flanks. It happened to me last night. My idiot character shouts out something, bam, I saw the guy that I was going for, he spins on the dot and comes for me, you know. Last up, remove parachute spawns. They, just why? They enable people who do not play the objective. They actively encourage camping, kill whoring and abusive gameplay. Spawn on the ground or don't spawn at all. Okay, now we come up to the future ideas. Now these are the ideas which just realistically there's no way they'd probably be able to put in place at this time, and there'd be no worth either because we're right at the end of the game, but in the future they might be worth considering, or I think they're really worth considering. So first up, it's objective points. Now this is Flappy Jack's idea. He works for DICE and he's in my squad that I play with. Now actually I should say this is Flappy's idea that I have twisted a little bit. Okay, this would only make sense for future games, but I believe it's one that's really worth putting in place. Basically, in addition to your XP bar, you would have a secondary bar called the objective bar. When in game, you would earn points for objective points by performing objective actions such as capping bases, destroying / repping vehicles, providing ammo, reviving teammates. If you placed in the top 3 players for your team, you would also receive an objective bonus. This pool of objective points would then allow you to unlock attachments and skins for your weapons instead of basically battle packs. You would select the weapon you want to unlock and or a skin, and then it's randomly determined, much as battle packs are. These could then be expanded on as weapons are released with future DLCs and skins, encouraging people to continue to earn objective points and to continue to play the objective in order to gain them. And that's a really good idea. I think it would work very, very well. I want to see it in the future. Next up, as I said before, balancing teams. It's a contentious issue because people want to play with their friends. They want to play with their friends in their squad. I do, you know. But steamrolling, it's a very, very bad thing. It's very difficult to find a direct solution to this, as it is a hugely complicated mechanic that's hard to fix without penalising somebody. But it does need to somehow be addressed, as I suggested above, with just a small maybe balancing on ticket differences with a few players. That's, as I see it right now, the best way around. If anybody has a better idea, drop it down. Team VoIP communications on console and PC. Squad VoIP is not enough. You need a team comm option, as we had in Battlefield 3. Otherwise, what's the point, right? You can talk to your squad, that's great, but you need to be able to talk to the team. You need to be saying, hey, we're going here, 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 look out for this, what about, you know? That's squad communication is not communication. You need team communication. Drop the commander. It was great to see it return. It was great that they tried it, but I would say it just didn't work. Let's not see that again. Okay, and finally, this is actually a game mode idea, but I think it does fit within the sort of remit of what we're talking about here, and it'd be called loadout. The squads are present, you can't create your own squad. You must join in and take on a preset loadout within the squad slot that has been predetermined, much like armor, but it's actually the kit is predetermined as well. So you just take on that slot, say assault, support, recon, it's all predetermined. The actual game mode itself, it would just be like a conquest assault variation, designed around strong objective gameplay and working together in your preset roles. Now you might be thinking, why do that? What's this all about? Where I was thinking about that from was actually from Battlefield 1943. In Battlefield 1943, you didn't have the ability to choose any of your kit at all. You just literally had to grab a class, preset class, and join in, okay? You could make specific changes, I believe, with some of those weapons there, but overall, it was just basically predetermined. So you just take your class, you get into the game. It's actually very interesting because it forces people to play in this sort of, you know, predetermined way, and with a predetermined kit. It limits certain options and it makes you work towards a common goal. It worked really, really, really well in 1943, and I actually loved the hell out of it. It was one of the things I liked the most about 1943. There was no wasted time thinking, okay, what works better? Does this work here, here? Maybe if I tweak this, change this gun, what do you do? No, you just grab the kit and you get in the game. And that's what it should be about, and that's what I would like to see in that loadout game mode. It also means that everyone is actually more balanced in terms of their gear, because people are taking, you know, they have comparable gear on both teams, so you don't end up with these weird imbalances. So basically a way of balancing people's kit, their roles, and the way in which they work together as a team. I think it could work really well. I'd like to see, you know, how it goes. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. Okay, so then we come on to the oddball ideas. These are the kind of, there's only a couple, and these are the slightly more out there ideas, which again wouldn't be coming in very now, but you know, again, they still have a kind of role to play within this sort of stuff. So the first one was a mandatory tutorial at the game's release. Now, I kind of mentioned this back, and it was actually good that we saw the test sort of server thing for multiplayer, but it still didn't really address it. Back in 1943, they actually had, as I say, it was like a tutorial mode. So you go into it and it tells you, hey, go here, do this, this is how you cap the base, and it shows you what to do, right? Now, what I think you should do is have this back, but but much better than that, okay? And it should be that it's only like a one-time view, you can disable it subsequently, and it should showcase the purpose and the ways you can play the game mode before you begin it. Not sure how effective this would necessarily be in the game itself, but if it was designed with a voiceover and an explanation of why you are doing what you are, it could have a benefit, especially for new players. It's not really going to affect veteran players. To be honest, you guys probably wouldn't even have to watch it, and if you did watch it one time, it's just one time, and then you never have to see it again. But I think you need something there for the players, the people that aren't going to watch YouTube, the people that come on, they never played before. You know, you forget how many new people come into the game, and something should be there to say to them like, hey look, you go here, you do this, think about doing a flank. It seems obvious to people like you who are watching this video right now and me who have been playing for a long time. It seems obvious, but the thing is, if you've never done it before, it's not obvious, and you would be surprised how many people don't even consider very, very basic things. You would just be astonished. Something like that I consider to be a bit more of an out there idea, but I think it would be helpful, and that's really what we're talking about is, you know, these, what can we think of that's going to help, right? This was a really crazy suggestion. This was one of my comments, I thought I'd throw it in here for fun. Punish players who camp at a distance away from the main objectives. And we're talking like the people that are really sitting on hills and stuff, right? Make it so they'll potentially lose health on certain maps due to environmental factors, e.g. cold or humidity and heat. Taking a specific type of clothing that will counter this could be an idea. So we're talking about sort of, maybe it's a bit blurry, maybe it's a bit harder to get, you know, the gun to fire straight, all this kind of stuff, you're a bit shaky or whatever. I know people are probably going to hate that, but again, consider it's just one of those out there ideas. A counter to this could be environmental clothing. Now right now, this was my idea. Right now, the clothing is essentially a skin, right? It just doesn't do anything. It's irrelevant, you know. Your clothing should provide some benefit to you. Either your ability to carry a little bit more gear, a little bit more, maybe a couple more grenades. No, just a little bit more gear or whatever, okay. In combination with the idea of the environment, maybe it kept help. In combination with the environment, maybe it'll help you stay a little bit cooler, warmer, you can run longer, be more stealthy, stay longer underwater, or, you know, something along those lines right there. And perhaps also, of course, we want to see like the bushwookie stuff come back, we want to see ghillie suits, etc, etc. Maybe you have ghillie suits you can customize and design yourself, whatever. I think you need to have better design for the clothing stuff and have some actual role to play that, otherwise it's just irrelevant. But I'd say trying to link it into objective in some way, the way that you actually enact with things in the game, I think would be valuable. Okay, Rush, I want to talk about Rush separately in some YouTube videos and what I think needs to happen with it, but for now, whilst the mode itself is kind of broken, a purely visual element that I would be awesome to see is like mini cutscenes. I've said this before now, right? Mini cutscenes that whilst you wait for the next base to unlock, like with Killzone 3, and I've linked that video below as well. That would be awesome to see, and again, I think it would actually psych people up. You know, you're sort of playing and it becomes kind of cinematic. You sort of do the first base and then you see what's going on, you move forward, you do the next base, you see what, you know, and it just kind of keeps that kind of feeling of like, yeah, we're achieving and moving and achieving and moving. I think that would be good to see in. Now, something that's just as important as the solutions is the cause. Why are we in the position we are now with objective play? The development of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, I think, combined perhaps some misinterpretation with the community, whilst also trying to compete too strong with Call of Duty. I feel that with Battlefield 4 this was less so, but with Battlefield 3 it's no doubt that EA tried to directly compete and bring down Call of Duty from the top. This was not constructive or a positive thing for many reasons, and it pushed Battlefield into this strange combination of fast-paced but also core Battlefield play. In the long term, this influence has negatively affected Battlefield, but not by the players. It has attracted, and I'm sure this is true to a small extent, you know, some people, you know, not constructive, but more by the fact that Battlefield just doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. It's trying to cover all the bases, and that's an extremely hard thing to do. And I think what we see now is reflected in the player base. It's a mix of people playing for kills, the objective, and for the trolling battle moments. By themselves, these things work for fun gameplay. All mixed together, it can be a horrible experience for all. It's much worse if you happen to be on a team of people who just don't care, but the enemy team is all very focused players. This happens so often. I get comments on a nearly daily basis about this. Now look at Call of Duty. It has a defined style of play, fast, furious, close quarters. So does Arma. Vast open spaces, serious attitude, teamwork is almost mandatory. A Battlefield sits in between all of these, and as a result of the game changing from a smaller audience of more, I would say, hardcore players to a wider open public sphere, this is then made worse by the way in which team play is not encouraged passively or in actuality. Now, classes are also a key point within the game, but by allowing people so much customization, it has, as I originally worried at the release of Battlefield 4, allowed people to create classes that simply do not enable the core gameplay. Assault or medic class should carry a variation of medical tools at all times. Same goes for respective tools in Engineer, Support and Recon. You should carry the stuff that enables you to do your core class responsibility, and then you can add personalizations on top of that. It shouldn't be that you can just customize the kit to make it whatever the hell you want it to. So now guys, I come to my conclusion about the team play and objective play in the CTE. Now, in regards to objective play, as I said in an email I actually passed through to Dan Mitre a while back about Hardline, I'm very concerned about the future of Battlefield. For all the reasons I highlighted above and more, I feel like we're at a precipice. I understand that the games need to be exciting, explosive, and appeal to a mass audience with all the kind of crazy shit and funny things that people love, right? But I also know that it's important to stay true and maintain the quality of gameplay that was established early in the series. And for the love of the money, I swear that there's not many people out there that are talking about this and pushing that stuff forward, because it doesn't seem to be something that people want to hear or push out there. I mean, I seem to be trying, and there's a few others that are, but our voices seem to be increasingly in the minority, and I think it's a really bad thing. The main reason I came to play Battlefield was always the objective play, how intense that could be. I feel that has happened with Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, but DICE, they've tried to create that feeling in the environment in a way they're kind of like pre-establishing how things are going to feel. Now, back in Bad Company, 2142, Battlefield 2, even 1943 and 42, those feelings you got were as a result of the furious and the strong team play, not because the game pre-established that experience. Now, what only in Battlefield means is that the marketing now encourages those moments to occur, rather than allowing them to naturally happen. This not only takes away the excitement of those true Battlefield moments, but it also damages the overall core gameplay, which is a very bad thing. I know that some of the changes I and the community have put forward here on YouTube and on Battlelog forums can sometimes seem a little extreme or, too out of the mark, but it's my personal feeling that if this is not properly addressed, if it's not actively taken and changed going forward, we're going to find ourselves in a really, really bad place. For whatever reasons you want to consider, we all know that the release of Battlefield 4 was not good at all. Even though I greatly enjoy the game, the public at large have widely responded negatively. Hardline, I don't know if I consider it to be a true Battlefield game, but as we come into the future with Battlefront as well, while this is going to be a very different game, I believe that the lessons that need to be learned here and now in Battlefield 4 will not go away. The worst case situation is that the continuing deterioration in objective play will drive away those core Battlefield players, the hardcore players, the players like me, the players like some of the guys that I play with who have been there from pretty much the beginning. And then you're going to find yourself in a situation that others have. A great game, but with a terrible community that effectively just kills the franchise dead. I do not want to see that happen with Battlefield, and that's why I keep talking about objective play, and that's why I keep pushing that forward, and that's why I'm going to keep speaking to people and trying to put that idea out there. I will not consider that, it's just changed and that's the way it is. Public play is now just always crap. I don't accept that. I don't subscribe to that. I think that by constructing the game around that core play, you can encourage people to do what they should be doing, which is the core gameplay. People are always going to say this crap about I paid my money, I can do what I want. It's bullshit. The core gameplay is the game mode, right? The game mode dictates what you should primarily be doing. All of that other stuff is secondary. All of that other stuff should just happen as a matter of course. And that is what makes it exciting and fun and hilarious. I love it when you're coming down a hill and you jump off and you blow this thing up or whatever, and you jump off a building and you turn around and you headshot a guy with a pistol, or you put a bit of C4 in your vehicle and you drive over and it rolls and it hits another and it crashes and it blows up. But when you have people that just orchestrate that, when you have it when people are literally just pre-designating that they're going to do that, when they sit down for an evening and they're like, oh my god, let's go fuck this up, and they just screw around and they screw things up, it ruins it for the game, it ruins it for everybody, it damages the franchise, and it damages the long-term prospects for the game. It pisses me off, you can probably tell. I'm sick to the back teeth of it, and I want to see it change. I think you guys want to see it change too. Tell DICE, tell everybody about it. Thanks for watching today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. let's see what happens. I can only give my thoughts. I can only say what I think. That's all I can do. Let's see how it goes. As always, rate the video however you want. Drop comments below. I'll see you next time for some more Battlefield 4.